information is emerging. And he writes in this particular article why media must be above reproach, especially on criminal cases. And I'll start with him because in one of the lines he says, journalists handling information from sources and writing stories in a manner that is protecting their sources, promoting the open justice concept, influencing investigations and judicial processes, while at the same time serving public interest. Victor, with what was at play today and in the last few weeks, what do you think? What is your diagnosis of the situation?
I think, thanks Mark and colleagues. The DCI, who is a friend, has a background in I think before he became the DCI, was the director at National Police Service in charge of communication. Actually, he was the official National Police spokesman. I mean, Charles was his deputy, but though Charles is more known. So I think he has carried that to give media fodder for writing, which in many cases, as it's coming out, is just writing. And some of those things would have helped the families and other people if he presented those things in court. Because we will read, and we have read other stories, not the first time, but eventually these cases, once they are in the justice system, never move. And even basic things like under the Electronic Evidence Act, some of these photos we have been shown and the rest, do they stand the test of time? I mean, if you look at it, I mean, National Cohesion and Integration Commission has suffered on hate speech cases, the same fate, where they get clips from media and related, and whenever they go to court on technicalities under the Electronic Evidence Act, they have never moved. So I don't know what lessons the DCI is learning, that much as he's prosecuting a lot of cases through the media, the courts might not be interested, while generally people think the media would help in influencing courts, but I don't believe.
Okay.
So the thing I was talking about, I mean the article you are quoting, and I was looking at the national court reporting books and guidelines. And while we want to report, and I have used police files, I mean, he was my editor when I was here and I was using police. But the way you want to use the police files is also a protection of your source is a key thing in journalism. So when you are using the information given in a way that makes obvious your source, because once those clips were used like that and other eyewitness statements or investigative statements, then you obviously see what the other people have taken. If you went online right now, the DCI is not getting very nice messages because you have opened it up. So to me, the issue was, how do we balance the issue of using those? Obviously, police files are one of the best sources of stories, but in a way that also does not compromise, one, the cases, one, the investigations, and two, what are the families of those affected going through when we are showing those graphics, okay, and the details in the investigation. So
let me talk to your former editor, Masai Gaizo. In your view, are we being led by the nose by these investigating officials?
Yes, I've said that before on this forum. I've said it elsewhere at various media forums. Kinoti may find value in giving us all these fantastic stories, but I think we are under no obligation to regurgitate what he is saying without interrogation. And too often we should be embarrassed when we report that there is ironclad evidence on this and that case. Then when what comes to court either does not come to court at all, or it is so weak it cannot even pass through the first stage of any prosecution. Mm-hmm. I think we should be able to interrogate everything that we are told, whether we are told by confidential sources or police files or a press conference like that today. I would expect that the reports we carry tomorrow are not just repeating word for word what Kinoti is telling us, but actually interrogating his statement.
Yes. And for you, Christine, in the name of public interest, are we playing to that, or is it just catch up so that we don't miss out on this juicy development?
Right. I concur with what my colleagues have said so far. Journalism is not stenography. Our job is not just to take notes as we are given, but it's to find meaning, it's to tease out trends, it's to bring not just heat but also light and understanding. And I find that in many of these stories that originate from police files or from the investigative authorities, as Macharia has said, really don't have anything beyond stenography, where you just annotate as you've been given. But the audience really doesn't get any answers or any deeper insight on why things happen, why this story is important, apart from it being important just because it's on the headline.
Yes.
And as you know, that becomes like kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where we are chasing our own tails. It's on the headline because it's important because it's on the headline, and then it becomes a cycle, right?
Yes.
But at the end of the day, the public is not informed. There's no meaning out of that situation. And how to get meaning is in connecting the dots, where pieces of information are not just presented as discrete pieces, but also that they are a whole picture.
Yeah.
And I think really that's what is missing a lot from our reporting. Everything happens in isolation and is unconnected to anything else that is not in that particular linear path. But our lives are not like that. Our society is not like that. Things are connected to each other. And I think it's our responsibility to tease out that meaning.
Okay, and I don't know whether this was a tweet to that effect in what was playing out on the screens, Makali. Tazama TV kama ukaribu na moja. You call yourself communication strategist, but you were an editor. And would you let it play out as it is playing out?
First of all, I think the blame here should not go to Kinoti. I think Kinoti is in his right to do what he's doing.
Yes.
He has to acquit himself in the public sphere that he is actually performing his duties and investigating. And it is his business to make sure that everybody goes along with him. And two, we have to understand the context of some of these so-called trials in the media. Because we're in an era where every investigation or every crime being pursued is being said to be targeting certain people or individuals, or there are certain motives beyond pursuit for justice or trying to go after criminal activities.
Yes.
So he has to, he has a duty to, first of all, debunk this myth. And I think his, what is it called, spectacular videos of the, what transpired at the DP's office in regard to the Chesa fake arms deal,
yes,
is basically to say, look, this thing happened and it's so serious, and the public had better be behind us as we pursue this and remove the politics out of it. So in that context, I'm likely to have sympathy for him. But on the other hand, I mean, we also shouldn't be, I think people should not be in a hurry to condemn media taking information from the police. That we have always done. It is that we have to use that information more judiciously and counter-check it. And if we are going to use that story as, stenographers, as Christina said, then we should hold Kinoti and the people who give us that information to account after we use it. We should go back and say, hey, you said this, but this is what you brought to court. What happened in between? Because the importance of this is that along the way, and as we know, prosecutions in this country and investigations, there's always evidence being tampered with, some not ending up in court. Even what is revealed now might fizzle out in the way on the road to court.
Yes.
So it's also important that we also keep track of how far investigations are. If there are leads, we hold on to those. And the media has to carry the memory along the way to make sure that what we had at the beginning ends up at the end, or if not, there should be good reason why. Because otherwise, that's how cases are crumbling in court, because we have had, and we know it, prosecution sometimes just messes up a case because of other influences, they've been compromised and so forth. So I think it is okay for me. And I think that we are in that era where we need to have what I would call participatory justice. In the past, we had investigations going on and whatnot. We ended up with no prosecution or acquittals or things like that, but we didn't follow it because the people who held those offices in the first place were always mean on information. You couldn't get anything when you went to inquire. So we should celebrate as media that we have at least investigative agents and prosecuting agencies that are willing to share the investigations as we go along. But we must be guarded that we don't led along a certain path,
yes,
because it's likely to happen as well.
It's definitely different times, and however, there are many who would ask if we're cautious enough with the details that we're being given. And if my director may just run some of the clips that we are having from the meeting, the supposed meeting, that there's now semantics about, or was it 1 hour, 22 minutes, was it 23 minutes? We get lost in that. But someone said, we know as much as a DCI and a DPP would want us to know. And with that, they use us. Are we working cautiously enough with that in mind?
I think first, Mark, I would say that Kinoti and journalists actually, they are doing a good job for this country and adhering to the Constitution. Because Article 35 of the Constitution on the access to information says that the citizens have got a right to know and have access to any information that is being held by government officers. And therefore, Kinoti, being in charge of these investigations, he is under obligation to share information that he has with the public. Let's begin from there. Then now the question is, how are journalists or media houses using the information that they obtain from Kinoti? Suppose Kinoti is carrying out these investigations and he refuses to share whatever he has with the journalists. I'm sure Masharia here and Victor and myself and Makali here will be out there accusing Kinoti of not releasing information. And I know some of the meetings we've had with the government officials, we've always complained that the problem why we are having information or stories that are inaccurate is because the government officers are not willing to share information with the media. Mm-hmm. And therefore we cannot demonize Kinoti. Kinoti has done his job. He has done investigations. He has given us the information. It's upon us now to use that information. How are we going to use that information? Kinoti doesn't write headlines in newsrooms.
He doesn't.
Kinoti, no, let me just finish. Kinoti does not write news in newsrooms.
Yes.
To me, as a secretary of KUJ, I'm happy that Kinoti is sharing information with journalists.
Yes.
And therefore, it's upon journalists and editors in newsroom to see how they're going to use that stories. Secondly, the information that actually Kinoti is sharing with the media actually is helping us now to know where the weaknesses are in our criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. If you look at the stories that we've had and the events that have happened there the last 2 days, actually we are now trying to see where the weak links are.
Yes.
The differences between Kinoti and Haji. Very soon we'll be able to know that yes, we had this information, but where did we lose the cases? And Victor started very well. Mm-hmm. By saying that some of these cases are lost on the basis of technicalities, not because there were no information or investigations are not carried out. So if we were able to share this information from the beginning,
yes,
and the journalists or the media houses are also able to share this information with the public, we are able to track where did we go wrong, where did we lose the ball, was someone compromised along the way, did the cases prosecuted very well in court. If you've been to court, and you will see that some of the cases, the way they are argued out in court, actually end up deciding how the judges are going to make the ruling. And therefore, we cannot say that because Kinoti is sharing information with the media, that's why we are losing. Let Kinoti share the information with us. Let us as the media and as journalists, as professionals, see how we are going to use that information. And therefore, we allow the public now to judge. This is what the Kinoti gave us. This is what ended up in court, and this is what the judges said. Then we are able to know that where is the problem in our justice system and how can we fix it.
Okay, and in less than 5 minutes, and you can jump in, whoever may, this will then evolve and it will change. And one of the responses from the Office of the Deputy President, and this might be a point of now contention, is the time that these supposed people were in this particular office, in the clip that you're watching right now at Annex Building, the Deputy President's office. And part of the response here says, according to CCTV footage, former Sports Cabinet Secretary Rashid Echesa and his accomplices were inside the building from 9:38 to 10:02, as confirmed by the CCTV aired at the offices. The rest of the time, the CCTV played at the DCI shows their movement outside the office. So we're getting lost in some of the details of how long it was. What would you want us to, how would you want us to deal with this story moving forward?
These are very important details, particularly because what Kinoti released today is contradicting what the DP himself had said.
Yes.
Therefore, it is part of our responsibility as we analyze those videos to also look at if there are any contradictions or anything which are, and to ask the questions. Mm-hmm. I noticed that I was watching from home in my living room. all the questions which were asked by journalists after that whole show were not answered. They say we are still investigating, or we are not at liberty to say. Then you ask them, what was the point of calling the press if you don't want to answer questions? Actually, that show today raised more questions than it answered. And we're not saying Kinoti should not release a statement or should not talk to the media. We welcome that transparency. But we do hope that we are not being given skewed reports, incomplete records, reports designed to mislead us into then writing misleading news and headlines, and so on and so forth. So we should have within ourselves, we should be able to ask those questions. If there are gaps in that information, we should be able to point it out.
Yes. But some might say, Christine, we should be clear enough as a journalist and the professionals to see where we are being used to be part of the bigger story.
Certainly.
Yes, because half-truths are still lies. When someone presents something that is half-baked, that does not mean that that's the truth. And it's very easy for us to be in this race, like you said earlier, in this race to be not to be left behind in the story, that we have to be there on and on and on. But like I said, without actually making that connection between, like what Eric said, this is what has happened, this is what we do next, this is where we are failing. This is what I'm saying by letting the story mature to the point where we can actually make meaningful inferences from the information that we are being given. I'm looking forward to that. I hope that by the end of this saga, if I can call it that, that we'll be able to get that at the end, that this is actually what happened and this is why it matters and this is what we should be paying attention to. And these are the lessons for us to learn, the various institutions, and this is what we are going to learn from it.
Okay, real quick.
And that's what I was saying. When the Computer and Cybercrime Act was passed, the thinking was that state officers always give the right information and it's other people who lie. So if you look at that act, it presumes that it's other people who can lie. So we get very concerned if it would seem that state officers are using the media to propagate misinformation. That's our concern, that if we become complacent to the level where we are just reproducing, return to sender journalism, where we are just reproducing and sending without questioning, then we might become part of the bigger lie.
Something else, David McCarthy.
That's the concern.
Did we get carried away with DCI, DPP, fallout, and which they came out today in a well-planned presser to show we are still boys?
I don't know what information the particular media houses had when they were carrying this story, but I wouldn't say so. I think there is a lot that the media don't publish. If you sit with Eric here, I sit with Macharia, we have tales and tales of what transpired before the DCI went to court with that file, without using the normal process of the DPP. But some of these things may not be written, but it does not mean they're not happening. And clearly there was a problem with that particular case, as there are many other cases, because if you hear from the Vineyard, there's so many cases which have been investigated, and I think there is an apparent frustration on the side of the police or the DCI or the ESCC with lack of prosecution of cases they believe they have investigated exhaustively and are resting on the desk of the DPP. So there must be push and pull, because each of them is facing pressure from the public to be seen to be working or to actually deliver results. So if the DCI investigates and people are saying, so what happened to the investigations? They say, we've done our part, it's the DPP. I'm sure there's some friction, but they have to put up, the optics have to be right. They have to speak with one voice.
Yeah, I have to take a break here.
Just like the arrest of the KPA managing director, where you jump and arrest somebody in a meeting, from a meeting. I mean, is there intelligence-led investigations? Is it something? Is it drama? Or even the Chesa or the Jamong arrest in Busia, where you got 2 in the morning and then do drama, and then 3 years ago there's nothing moving on. So I mean, the thing is processes. While they can be and there should be frustrations, but some of the processes in some of these things that we do a lot of drama. At the end of the day, 5-6 years, we are just there. So
all that drama is good for the cameras.
Yes, the drama is good for the cameras.
But is that that's why we have to look at the judicial process. I mean, is that is the DCI or the ODPP to blame for that, strictly speaking? Because if you follow cases in court, the adjournment, the lack of progress on those cases, sometimes actually, you know, might belong elsewhere. The blame might belong elsewhere.
Yes.
But Masai raised an issue here. When journalists asked questions on the status of investigation, they were told none of the questions were answered.
Yes.
You know,
And
that's the
just-
thing.
Yes. Hold on, Christine,
Just
first
to
and
add
then
on to
Henry.
that, just to add on to that, there are very many scandals, cases, and questions that we have right now
Yes.
that we are not getting a flood of information. We are very much in the dark about. So my question is, why are some cases having this abundance of information and others where it's just dead?
Yes. That's
Ladies
the
and
question.
gentlemen, I think one thing we must do, we must separate, I think there are two processes here. We have people who are charged with the responsibility of carrying out investigations. We have people with the responsibility of prosecuting these cases in court, and we have people who have got responsibility listening to these cases and also passing judgment. Then we have the media here that actually is supposed to be the link between these processes and the public. And therefore, whatever happens, when a case has been prosecuted in court, whether it succeeds or not, I think we cannot blame the media for whatever outcome. For us, our work is to make sure that there is that link, and we also agree that that link should not be influenced, so that there is that clear flow of information from these processes and the public. I think that's where we operate, and actually that is where we operate that space. Okay. There is that clear link. So long as I agree, so long as that this link is not influenced to propagate or come up with the information that is going to favor someone else. Because there is no way how you will expect journalists who are sitting in his room to have an influence on what a judge is going to do, whether we reported this or not. So let us separate that.
Okay, let me take a break at this point. Sorry to hold your point, but you can bring it up after we come back. Because we is that a threat? We'll be back shortly. And yes, to even talk about something else that has been read as a threat from the Media Council. He will respond to that. Stay with Mesbas.
Now, prices of several commodities, mostly consumer goods, are set to go up courtesy of coronavirus. Now, one explanation being that most products are imported from China. Shida inataka kuingilia hapa kwa the people who love to take advantage of things, of every situation. Nimekuambia Githurai ni 300. Si hata unajua hii barabara tumetoa China. There's a time you fly, you can let the plane go. Inaitwa autopilot.
Autopilot, automatic pilot, yes.
Yeah.
But it's a computer.
There's a driver who did that on Jogoo Road. Alitoka akaacha watu waende.
I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up.
Trend.
It's going down, cause I'm around.
Trend.
Everybody knows I'm up. Let me make one thing clear.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Trend.
Nothing can stop me, I'm all the way.
The Trend, in association with Maybelline, New York.
Fit Me Foundation from Maybelline, New York. Fits your unique tone and texture. Blurs pores, stops shine. For your most natural matte. Fit Me Matte and Poreless, only from Maybelline, New York.
It's one thing when you lose your job, but it's one thing when you lose your job so publicly. So when it then happened, I didn't know what to do. I was crying. Then I went home. Then The hardest person to tell was the nanny.
Why?
Because what do you tell her? Kazi Meisha.
Actually doing something that you're meant to do on this earth.
Yeah. Purpose is informed by passion. It's placed in our heart for a reason. I would like to be remembered as a person who took business journalism to where it's supposed to be. Because we're all hustlers. At the end of the day, you want information about how to grow your business.
That's
so
true.
Where did you get it from?
From Terry and Chebet.
With Lipa na M-Pesa, you get more.
Lipa na M-Pesa.
Every 100 shillings spent on Lipa na M-Pesa earns you an entry into the draw. Do more with Lipa na M-Pesa.
It's delicious.
Welcome back, and just to conclude on this particular issue on the investigations in the killing, the murder of the Sergeant Kene, who's was attached to the Deputy President's office, and Wayman, you say, as you follow this conversation, can DCI give us name of killers instead of making story too long that doesn't make sense? What about call data? Did they look? And yes, they did, but you make your point on this issue. And during the break, Christine said she had a question to revisit on something he said about headlines and whether someone is behind
writing our headlines.
Yes, thank you. Eric earlier said that DCI doesn't write headlines. DCI is not in our newsrooms. Journalists are not robots, and he has never seen anyone from the police services coming to write a headline to sit next to you and say, Andika hii. But my question is, if we have this culture of just taking what has been given as a dossier or a file and putting it on the headline, effectively, it's those agencies that are writing our newspaper headlines. Whether or not they sit here and, even without threatening, without coercion, without any of these things, it's something that we as journalists, we have kind of folded ourselves into when we actually have a choice. In the past few months, our headlines have really been saturated with a lot of stories of corruption, scandals, big issues, right? And sometimes when those issues hit the headlines, they seem very neat and complete, right? Like the story is done and here is, like you're being presented with a finished product on a bow. And I ask myself, I don't see investigation happening in this story. Like how did it happen? In school, we used to be told to show you're working. It's not enough to just have the right answer. We need to see you're working. And I think when we get stories from these agencies, the working is missing because we didn't do the work. And there's no way that we can fake our way through that. Right. After some time, the public catches on to that we're actually not doing the work.
Mashari and then Eric, just to respond.
The fact is that we're already under scrutiny by the public for seemingly reporting everything we are told by the DCI without question. And I think if we're aware of that, then we should be more cautious. I would just hope that the stories we have in tomorrow's paper from today's statement is not just regurgitating things you were given by Kinoti, that we should be able to look at that thing in context. And also we have to be aware it is a very politically sensitive case. And maybe that is why there was a press conference.
Yes.
So we do have to raise these questions, to be aware of that environment, and also to ask what is Kinoti's motive. Well, we welcome information in giving us this particular information at this time. Beyond what he said, what other subtle messages may have been sending. These are all things it is up to us to interrogate.
You made a point about him not responding to questions right after that press briefing. And there's the issue then of if his defense or his answer to the questions of journalists is the investigations are ongoing. But you're trying this issue in the court of public opinion through the media. So are we playing into a trap there? And as you respond to what Christine brought
I
up.
think we're not playing to any trap. And all of us here, we've been in newsrooms. We know how a newsroom operates. And I know even Mashara, when he was working as an editor, you know that we have those meetings. And I know you'll always ask in the investigative desk, what are you having today?
Certainly.
Okay, yes, definitely you ask them that.
I would
yes, then after
I would interrogate
exactly after asking
as
them that
an
question,
editor.
and after asking that question, I know you'll tell them, okay, fine. Can you please call DCI and find out what is happening there? That's the process we do in newsroom. Then this investigative reporter will go out there to the DCI and find out and peruses through those files and get information and comes back. Then this reporter will brief Masharia. I've gone to the DCI. This is what I found out. Then he'll tell you, write a story and bring it here. Then Masharia edit it. So let me just finish.
Wait a minute.
Let's just finish. Yes, exactly.
Even
Yes,
if
we'll do that.
from the DCI.
No, but now what is coming out here, what Masharia and Christine, they're saying as if Kinoti leaves his office. He comes here with a story already done or a file and gives a reporter that, you know, this is what I've done today, please look at it.
I believe what they're getting at is shaping of narratives.
That is not the case, because I know, and from the planning meetings we have in newsrooms, reporters are actually assigned. Every reporter, actually crime reporters or investigative reporters are assigned in these offices. And you will be told, and you know very well that if an investigative reporter does not produce these stories, definitely there will be sanctions that, you know, there are a lot of things happening in this country and you're not telling us. When these reporters go to the DCI, and DCI is very philanthropic enough with information and shares the information, we are now saying that DCI actually feeding us with information. So we must also address and debate these issues vis-a-vis the processes of producing newspapers and news in newsroom, because DCI, sometimes we are the people who go to his office and find out what do you have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, nothing wrong with sourcing. Yes, Makali and then Victor.
I understand that as a journalist and a good journalist, you need to have a certain level of skepticism. But there are certain stories which are straight and they are attributable. So this is a matter that the DCI is informing the public about the progress of the investigations. You can query, you can raise questions, but unless you have a different account, you'll be misleading even your readers to go on a tangent, try and create tales which don't exist. There is no journalist who can investigate this matter more than the police are doing. Let me just tell you for fact. That's a lie. Anybody pretending to do that is a liar. Two, what probably I would have expected the DCI to do is to make a public appeal out of that demonstration. Say, look, we have settled that this was a murder. So if anybody out there in the public has any information that can help us to unravel this, come forth. But they ended up with a presentation, as Macharia says, to serve certain objectives which are unknown to us, but I suppose is to acquit himself in the public domain, that this is open air justice. Yes. If you have anything different from what we are saying, come forth. Because now you can't prosecute things in the dark as we used to do. Everything is out there in the public.
Yes.
But let me just finally address the point of people saying that all these things go, trying to be the DCI, trying to be Haji, for a moment. And in that office, there is a lot of expectation of results. But the results, as we said, are beyond they're beyond their hands.
Yeah.
Why can't journalists go to the courts? They have all these cases of corruption and investigations of whatever nature. Why are they not going to courts to find out the files? What is happening with the file when the matter comes to court? Who is delaying the prosecution? Rather than just saying, nothing has come out since we began investigations, but there are reasons why. Judges are making those postponements of hearings. Defense is asking for more time and all manner of things. The prosecution is also not ready. So there are many things that people need to look at, and I think the media's role is to bring these factors out and track the progress of the reports of the prosecution of these major cases in court.
Victor.
That's why I agree that instead of showing the differences between Haji and Kinoti, just to show that because a file reached, if there are already evidence that he has been frustrating, that's the bigger story. And we can go, like you are saying, to these stories that have stalled and ask for reasons. Instead of allowing people to come and play drama in court and then say we are just showing that there's a difference between, we need to say that difference, because that then what makes journalists what journalists are. I mean, we are not pipelines just to pass, and we must add value to the information we get and interpret, show trends, like she said, connect and help people to understand what is happening.
However, the drama which played out in court between the DCI and the prosecution cannot be ignored. It is a legitimate story. From there, then it leads us now to the bigger story of what is the background, what is the where are the actual case files, how many case files have been presented to the DPP and not prosecuted. We can also then go beyond that.
Okay.
Is there a good reason why they were not prosecuted? Maybe there was not. Maybe the DPP is right in saying that there was not enough evidence to take to court.
This is something that has many turns. Yes.
To help. We also have, sources in those sources, and some of them will tell you that tunatumia mtu yenyu utaona tu hivyo ikiwa kesho. So it's not people are just saying that police are not writing headlines for us. Those things have happened. And sometimes they share some of those things are shared on some of the close WhatsApps, and you will see that story as a return to sender, the way it was sent from whoever. So those things are happening.
Evidence.
Those things are happening.
Christine,
last word on this. And we just need to be careful.
Last word on this.
Last word is that I still believe that the Kenyan media has a lot to offer, and that we have good people and enough resources to do good work. Okay. And the thing that we are not doing is that we have so much at our disposal, but are just not closing that gap. It's a small gap, but it will make such a big difference.
Well, Makali says it's a big lie if you think that there's any journalist who can investigate better than the DCI.
We have brains, and we can ask questions, and we can see when we are being led by the nose. We can see when we are giving information that is incomplete, and all that.
All right, and to something else that was on us as well because of the details that came out, and that is on Gire Ali, who is actually back to work at KQ. He's part of the security team. He shared a video of the screening process at the JKIA when a China Southern plane touched down, and he got into trouble for that. And the Minister for Transport believes he should be in court and not back to work. And we asked the people what they thought about this, and this was their opinion.
Two things. First of all, he was not a whistleblower. You don't whistleblow on a 787 arriving at 7 a.m. in the morning. That flight was not arriving at night in secret. We all could see it. So what was he whistleblowing? The airport chair is a security installation. Even I, CS Health, I can't go with a video filming the airport. You cannot. That's illegality. He committed a crime, and the legal system will determine what needs to be done on that.
Chenye Wasiria alisema huyo mtu mwenye alipiga picha kuhusu hiyo ndege wa China waliingia hapa Kenya. Huyo Wasiria aliongea vibaya. Kwa sababu huyo ni Mkenya na alitetea wa Kenya.
Huyo Wasiri wangejua ya kwamba huyo jamaa amefanya mzuri sana kukufunulia ile siri ilikuweko hapa Kenya.
Mimi sikubaliani na waziri kwa sababu mtandao sasa iko free. Kama ni kuadhibiwa, watu wote wenye wangekuwa na posti hiyo mambo mbaya kwa mtandao walikuwa washa kuadhibiwa. Hii ilikuwa kuokoa nchi. Sasa yeye hafai kuadhibiwa.
Ni makosa sana kumshika huyo jamaa because huyo jamaa anachunga wengine kama si yeye, unajua, yani alikuwa na consider others. That's why I took the video.
Ilikuwa right kupeana picha ndio hata wale wa security akuwe attention iko watu wanaingia ndio asuie.
Maybe kwa hiyo area ingefaa that kuna sheria inasema that usipige picha kwa kama hapo, lakini kwa maoni yangu nyewe alifanya vizuri sababu alileta kila mtu wao akiingia. Ndio sasa Wakenya wengine wajue kama hiyo wa Chinese wako na waliletea ugonjwa hapa kwetu.
Wangetafuta namna kwanza ya kuzuia hiyo ugonjwa isambae kuliko kufuta huyo mjamaa kazi. Yenye wangefanya ni kufuta hiyo ugonjwa kwanza, alafu na mjamaa endelee na kazi.
I thank that boy, that youth, kwa sababu hangeliona, hangetuambia chuidio hii ya coronavirus inakuja Kenya, hatungejua.
Kubwa sana kuona waziri anayejua sheria hakutumia sheria kumpiga msasa ule kijana alichukua lile dege likiingia nchini Kenya.
Huyo mwenye alitusaidia, kwa sababu naweza sema alitusaidia sana kutoa ile kitu ambayo walikuwa wanaficha.
Mimi ningeonelea huyu mtu angefutwa kazi kwa sababu aliokoa nchi yetu
Huyo ndugu ambaye alipika picha hiyo ndege ya China alifanya vizuri sana, na hakuna jambo lolote ambalo linaweza lazimu huyo jamaa awe aadhibiwe.
Hawakufanya vizuri because huyu mchamaa alikuwa anataka kutusave sisi kama Wakenya wenzake. So hiyo chambo naomba waifuatilie.
Huyu mtu mwenye alikuwa anashika hii ndege yenye ilikuwa inatoka China, wenye walimfuta kazi walikosea, sababu alikuwa anatusaidia sisi kama Wakenya.
The whistleblower alifanya jambo nzuri, na ni makosa sana kupanisha whistleblower, sababu aliweza kusaidia Wakenya wajichunge.
Whistleblowers should be encouraged. They should not be punished.
We have 18 minutes to discuss this particular matter, and I'll start with Christine on the issue of whistleblower, whether we misidentified him and the action that has, or the Transport CS's opinion on this public interest and protocol, security protocol.
Just watching that clip, it was apparent that the public support for this guy is overwhelming.
Yes.
I did not hear one negative or, one comment that was supporting his sacking or his censure or his prosecution.
Suspension, yes.
Everybody said that he was doing the right thing in the public interest, and he had the interest of Kenyans first. He wasn't doing it for his own, but he was putting Kenyans first. And this is the question of following protocol or versus doing what is right, even if it may not fall according to protocol, right? And those clips have encouraged me because they've shown me that Kenyans understand what civil disobedience is. Disobeying improper protocol or unjust laws is sometimes the right thing to do if it is being done in the public interest.
Yes.
And that's very encouraging to me. However, we have to acknowledge what Makali said earlier. Is there anyone who can investigate better than the police, for example? We challenge you to come forward. When this guy came forward with this piece of evidence, for example, the impact from the officials or from the official channels was very severe upon him. And the truth of the matter is, when you act in the public interest in Kenya, you're attracting some kind of consequences to you. And this is something that I think we should be conscious of, but also that I'm really encouraged to see that Kenyans interpreted that story to be that he was doing the right thing,
yes,
and that what the minister said, what the CS says was not right.
Right.
Because that was not in the public interest. That we cannot have protocols that have a higher position than the humanity of Kenyans.
Okay. And Masharia, to you, in the interest of his protection as well.
CS Masharia, first of all, let me clarify that he's not my relative. I must do that.
Okay.
Because we have this cabinet secretary who has got such a big docket. He's in charge of transport, public transport, airports, seaports,
yes,
our ferries, housing. In almost every area he is failing. Then he is here bothering with small things and making himself sound so important. I think he's got better things to do. Secondly, he is telling a big lie. Okay, I'll grant one thing. That fellow is a security officer, and he may be bound by certain conventions. And if he felt that there was a breach of security, maybe he could have raised it in other channels. But when the CS says that that is a security installation and you cannot film there, that is absolute hogwash. Because every day we see people getting off airplanes or getting onto aeroplanes,
selfies,
and doing selfies and filming and doing videos and photographing each other. As we were watching that clip, there was a camera crew interviewing and filming the passengers. So why aren't those ones being arrested? It's ridiculous.
Makali?
Well, there's not so much you can say in opposition to what Macharia has just announced.
His relation to
yeah, but I think we must acknowledge two things, in all honesty. I think there was no need for the CS to say what he said.
Yes.
I think he should have read the public mood. There are some things which are indefensible. He might have breached employment protocol, but there is a superior call, the patriotic duty, which is what he served by disclosing or sharing the video. And it, to some extent, I think I want to credit the uproar. I mean, his video to the uproar that followed, and which pushed the government to now put in strict measures with regard to corona. So I think, you know, there are things let's first admit that maybe by his employment terms, he would have breached his employment regulations.
Yes.
But those are things you sacrifice in the greater public good. And so he would be acquitted and released and just told, you know, that's not the right thing to do. But the overwhelming public interest here defeats any action, punitive action against him.
And in terms of overwhelming interest, when this video came out, we knew who he was. We ran to him with cameras and everything. And at first we were wondering, should we show his, you know, his face, how to protect him? Did we go right about it, any of you?
Yes, I think we are right, because I tend to disagree with Makali, and I would want anybody to convince me any section of Employment Act that this gentleman actually breached. There is none. In any case, if he pursues this case against Kenya Airways, he'll be a millionaire despite the financial problems that the company is facing. Because basically this is unfair administration of administrative action. And if you look, actually even the court has gone even as far as actually exonerated him, because the court has even ordered the government to go and look for these passengers who actually were in this plane and make sure they are quarantined.
Yes.
So which action are you going? You know, sometimes you look at how our cabinet secretaries are arguing, and you ask yourself, how did these guys end up in these offices? Because again, which law are they going to use to charge him with? Because basically, this guy has already been exonerated by the courts. If the courts are ruled that let's stop the flights from coming to Kenya. Number two, go and look for these passengers in quarantine. So basically, the court is agreeing with the action that this guy actually took. So therefore, some of these, our ministers actually, they should actually just save us from this public ridicule.
I think Eric is venturing into territory he doesn't know. He's saying which law, but every employer has got terms and
conditions,
regulations, especially because this guy is employed in the security department. Let's not be a little flippant about it. You see, even these things about the airport getting category A status to fly in and whatnot, these issues have brought certain conditions for people who are doing security work there. So I suspect, I don't know, that he might have breached some of the work-related conditions. What he should do, but I cannot, it's not about Employment Act.
No, let me just, because this is my territory of operation as a trade union. And I know very well, yes, I know very well the procedures that are followed when you want to do suspension and when it's summary dismissals, and I know the sections in the Employment Act and the procedures. I know that. So that's what I'm saying, that they should be telling us. Yeah, I know, because number two, there is no way the HR policies can override the Employment Act, because the Employment Act actually stipulates the relationship between an employer and an employee, and also stipulates very well how the contract can be terminated. All those things are there. That's what I'm saying.
Let me just clarify, Eric. I'm not disputing the procedures for employment determination and so forth. I'm focusing on the determination of whether he did wrong at work.
Okay.
The process of punishing him and dismissing him is something else.
Exactly.
But whether he did wrong by his employment terms, work-wise, is something we can't venture into.
Victor, a few seconds. His protection. Let's go to the protection of this gentleman.
Led the government task force on government communication.
Hence his response.
I mean, the thing is,
his protection.
The need for consistency.
Yes.
If people have been taking photos and selfies and other things at the airport, then one action is picked out, then victimization becomes an issue. So the need for, much as the airports can be prohibited areas and all those, they need to be consistency.
If he was punished, would it be on us to make sure that he is protected?
I mean, I know, Mark, because we have talked this with you, don't suffer from guiltiness.
Okay.
You are not responsible for the action that was taken against that officer because you hosted them here. Because we have had discussions since last week with you, and don't feel you are guilty. You are doing your work as a journalist. Even if you protected that colleague by face, he was already known at his place of work.
Yes.
So it's not the NTV having hosted him that caused him to be known. So I request you not to feel guilty
Wasn't
about
honest.
it. I mean, because you are not, and you did what you could at that time because we talked. So
Yes.
to me, that's an issue. But obviously, the issue of protection of sources is there. We have talked about the issues of whistleblowers. But the whistleblowers, there's a whistleblower agency here in this country. How it works, how effective it is, might be something different. But in some instances, you cannot be held that, I mean, you are guilty because you interviewed that colleague.
All right, let me stop it at that point. But then when we come back on the concluding part, we've dedicated it to the Media Council, or rather, what the Media Council said about the headlines and the uproar that came after that. We have the representatives and stakeholders who would give their views after the break. Stay with us.
Eldora Technical Training Institute (ETTI) prides itself as a student-centered institution committed to nurturing and growing careers. Enrollment for May and September intakes is ongoing. Apply now. Eldora Technical Training Institute. Growing reputation.
Sensitivity is a short, sharp pain that people experience when they have something hot or cold getting to the nerve of the tooth. Dentists recommend Sensodyne to their patients. It's able to get inside the tooth and calm the nerve of the tooth down. And the proof's in the results. It works.
I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up.
Trend.
It's going down, cause I'm around.
Trend.
Everybody knows I'm unstoppable. Let me make one thing clear.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Trend. Nothing can stop me, I'm all the way.
The Trend, in association with Maybelline New York.
Fit Me Foundation from Maybelline New York. Fits your unique tone and texture. Blurs pores, stops shine. For your most natural matte. Fit Me Matte and Poreless, only from Maybelline New York.
Once again, it's time to run at the Beyond Zero Half Marathon 2020. Come and run with us.
I will run for a healthy lifestyle for the elderly.
I will run for access to better healthcare.
Register now at beyondzero.or.ke, all Nairobi Sports House branches countrywide, Athletics Kenya Riadha House, or any of the registration centers countrywide. Beyond Zero Half Marathon 2020. I will run.
Welcome back. And this is a statement from the Media Council dated 27th of February this year. And on the third para, I choose to read this. As a fourth estate, the media has a sacred commitment to the public good as gatekeepers of society and must owe their loyalty first and foremost to Kenyans and remain neutral in all public contestations. However, in perhaps the worst display of prejudiced journalism, the media have resorted to a partisan, skewed, and informal presentation of news and current affairs, even when covering pertinent national issues that deserve professional and balanced approach. And we'll show you some of the clippings that were cited in the Media Council's deeper report on what they felt was not professional in the conduct of journalists, especially in the recent weeks with the headlines. And please, if we may, just run them. And there's a response here from the Editors Guild. But Victor, was this, as has been read, a threat, just to set the record straight?
I mean, Mark, Media Council is as a regulatory institution.
Yes.
That where journalists regulate themselves. And advisories are global practices where, I mean, if you go to Scandinavian countries, Denmark, advisories are issued every day on matters that purely are relating to journalists. Media Council every Monday releases Observer magazine, which is largely, those pieces of, we have noted this, yes, and share. So there's nothing new in that advisory. It's a standard, we have done it before, Westgate, Dusit attack, and others, where we said, this is this and this and this. So there was nothing, and in any case, Mark, those are the things the first part of this discussion were largely around those. And the fact that people can take a different opinion and something does not mean there's a raging war, there's a fight, there's a conflict there. So while people are forcing to be there to be a conflict simply because we took different approaches to the same thing, I can't understand. So to us, it was purely a routine advisory that are done every Tuesday, and in fact Tuesday we are releasing another one. So to us, we didn't look at it that way.
Okay.
And the fact that editors responded, that does not mean there's a conflict. That's their position on how they looked at the thing. In the contrary to how Media Council looked at the thing. So to me, that's healthy, and there's nothing much that...
Healthy engagement. The editors partly said, and this is Churchill Otieno, the president of the Editors Guild, they protest the questions and question news headlines content, and part of it here, the MCK is a regulator of media in Kenya, but this in no way gives it a right to interfere with editorial independence. The director or head of media strategy and development has just said this is an advisory and not a threat. So overreaction here from the media stakeholders?
Mark, would you allow me just to highlight? Could we actually say what the advisory was about, what the substance was, what the Media Council said was wrong or could be improved in the report, like the substance of it?
Yes, and I believe this was on the headlines in the recent past, which they feel, yes.
Yes, it talked vaguely about headlines in the recent past.
Yes.
Our problem was that it did not give one single incident or example. No. As at the time that statement was released, it was not the usual advisory. It was a very stern warning. It was a threat. And it did not give one single instance of where the code of ethics has been flouted. It was a general condemnation of the media. Okay? It was a general condemnation of the media. Secondly, if you look at it in terms of the environment, you don't even know what it is they are reacting to. But in my mind, they are reacting to complaints by politicians about, to complaints by politicians about the way they are being covered.
Targeted or hit,
and
yes.
I look at it this way. Almost every day there has been these things about Deputy President William Ruto. And the moment there's a headline about him, Dennis Itumbi tweets something, castigating the media. Ruto himself tweets something. Murkomen tweets something. When I read that statement, I wondered, is Dennis Itumbi writing for statements for Media Council? As simple as that.
Well, he's responded. He says
and I'm
no.
saying,
yes.
I mean, there was now a politician reacting
No
to the
phone
politician.
call.
There was nothing. I mean,
that is what we said. Please tell us who are the complainants.
I mean, because to imagine that it has to see, and this discussion, the earlier discussion here in this program itself was about those issues we are raising about skewed headlines, sometimes headlines that do not, I mean, it's the same thing. So to imagine that we must be called by somebody to notice that, while we do media, media monitoring every day, is also to push it too far.
What we said is simple.
So that's what
give clear examples of where this...
Actually, we are waiting for that letter from you.
Let me say this, and I think, Victor, I don't think you should be defending this position. Huh? Because definitely you are going against your own act. Because the act says that in such an incident, if you want to make that public reprimand, what you need to do, you have to be specific either against a journalist you are reprimanding or a specific media enterprise. So therefore, probably, maybe the intention was, but at least the way it was handled probably is the problem. But the law, the Media Act actually allows you to do that. But it says that if you want to do that, you have to specify that we are issuing this against Nation Media Group or Standard Group or Media House A or this against. That's what your act says.
We have already said the media houses in question.
Yeah, no, this statement, this statement did not.
The challenge is
this
to
statement did not.
The challenge is to assume that when you mention editors are positions.
No, I'm saying
they are not. Journalists is the profession.
Victor,
so the thing is, you are assuming that we didn't send to media houses those specifics.
That's what I'm saying.
So because Nation did not get, Standard did not get. So you think we have not said.
This was a general statement, condemning the entire media.
We didn't condemn.
I'm still repeating.
We didn't condemn. Finish your statement, then Christine jump in.
The act says that in the event that you want to do that, you have to be specific. You don't condemn the entire industry. You have to be specific that yes, because the intention might be good for this country and even for the general good of journalism fraternity. But you do not make that blanket condemnation. You just say, because once you've done that, basically you will now trigger a debate over all issue about peer review, and people will come in and people will have an input because you are specific about a specific journalist or a specific case or a specific media.
And as Christine has read it out, or rather brought it out, and if you may please just get a copy of what I'm looking at in terms of a look at what I'm looking at in a split screen. These are some of the headlines that have been spotted in this report dated the 25th. And let me just move it a bit to the side here so you can see. And yes, and even going to the dates of the particular headlines and the concerns that have been raised there. And yes, here you have it, the headlines. Of course, these are some of the headlines, and these are the particular stories that were flagged and the headlines with the date and the publisher. Christine, as you respond, and then Makali.
Yes, I'm not sure if this came before first or after the general statement.
The study was done before the statement, yes.
Yes, but to me this was very helpful and illuminating because over the past maybe 2-3 months, all the headlines have just been exactly like this: fallout, clash, chaos, breakdown, Ruto, palace coup, BBI fallout. Basically, what is BBI fireworks, man under siege, and all that. And the report was highlighting the problem with that headline over and over, and the same version of the same story over and over again, such that Kenyans don't even have room to breathe, to understand like what's going on, right? The headlines are, this is what the report said, that the headlines are sensationalist, they present BBI as overhyped, and we're using connotations, rich vocabulary with so much intrigue, but people don't actually understand what's going on. And it's like we're all spectators of this gladiatorial, duel or face-off, right? And I wonder if that's the position of citizens in a republic. Are we supposed to just be observers of, these people clashing and facing off and falling out all the time?
Yes.
And they also said that the headlines don't actually match up with the content. In some of these headlines, for example, Man Under Siege, when you read the story, there was actually what I said earlier, the people were not able to show their working in the story. The headline says this, but the substance doesn't actually corroborate or substantiate it. Yeah. And for me, I think these were very valid points. And the truth of the matter is that Kenyan audiences are exhausted or if they're not getting exhausted, then they're already exhausted. Because sincerely, you cannot have these headlines every single day, apart from the 1 week when we had, the Moi headlines.
Yes.
But then, I mean, we have been collating and curating the headlines since the beginning of January. And to be honest, they do not vary from this theme.
This is as
at
Baraza
all.
Media Lab.
Yes. Fireworks, clash, breakdown, fallout. I mean, like, we are constantly in a state of anxiety and panic as audiences, and this is a real problem.
Makali, why do you laugh at as she makes the point?
Well, I would say, if I was a traditional journalist, that is called staying with the story. Because it simply means that the onslaught or the fights or whatever is going on being reported has not abated. And so you must keep reporting it. It might be tiresome, but I'm not sure, I don't want to agree with Christine. I have no evidence that the public is tired of those headlines or those stories, particularly. The headlines might be true because they look too much alike. And I'm not defending it. Yes. Because I think, quite frankly, I also read and listen to stories and they are oversold. You look at the headline, then when you get into the content, it doesn't measure up.
I have evidence.
So I think there is merit.
Sample that. Yes.
There is merit in that. But I want to say this. I want to address the matter of the advisory. I was one of the people who were a bit taken aback by a generic advisory. Because, I mean, Victor talks about advisories which are issued, even security ones. But even when the US issues an advisory against Kenya, they don't say don't go to Kenya. They say don't go to Lamu, don't go to Budalangi. So you identify an area and localize your advisory there. In the case of a newspaper, they should have said, look, we've looked or we've had evidence or complaints or we've analyzed your headlines, you Daily Nation, and we find that these stories are not measuring up or they're alarmist. And there has to be just not an opinion, but it has to be also substantial. Yes. Now, the first press statement they issued went without any substantive evidence. So the evidence was chasing the accusation. Much later, I haven't seen the evidence yet. But more importantly, you cannot do an advisory that almost says to whom it may concern. Yeah. Absolutely not. I think you need to polish up, you guys, if you're going to continue issuing the advisories, localize them.
Issues of approach.
And even as you read what's on the screen, Victor, I don't know if you can see that. And as we continue with this discussion, some of the headlines in your news are so misleading. The other day you wrote Twatwa in Mandera to denote a gunfight in Mandera, not knowing what your headline means at a glance.
Mark,
and this wasn't in the papers, this was actually on NTV.
Where we come from, like they say, that was a policy decision, and we stand by it.
Yes.
The issue is approach, like you are saying, it might be approach, but the issues, and if we record this program and listen to it tomorrow, this current program, the things we are now saying, Media Council did, is the things that made the first part of this discussion. And I'll avail a copy to all of you, because it's the same thing we are raising. The thing we are raising is an issue of approach.
I think there's something we're not getting clear. This is the first time an advisory issued by the Media Council has raised such flag, because normally they are quite detailed, they are quite moderate in their approach, and they point out things which should be helpful to the media. This was a blanket condemnation. Secondly, you assume that Nation and Standard and the people and the Star, you give the picture that they're in a conspiracy. Yet there are many other newspapers in this country which don't have those same headlines. So then I get the feeling that you want to sit down and dictate what headlines should be.
No.
Now we got that evidence later, the one which you projected there of that study.
Yes.
Now, if you go to the Media Council website, you can pull down, we call them advisories or media reviews or whatever. What do you call them? for the last 6 years, all of them are very well thought out, very well toned. If there's a study, they give the statistics. There's data. There is something on the methodology, the identity of the authors, and so on and so forth. This one is a leaflet, a 2-page leaflet, without any background. Okay. Secondly, it seems it was written to justify a pre-existing position.
No.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. It concludes by saying that all these headlines are meant to divide Jubilee. It says that. Do you want me to quote? Secondly, then it focuses on the headlines on Ruto and takes particular exception to headlines that are touching on Ruto. No, don't deny because it is on paper.
You're talking about the longer report.
What I'll request on this matter is that...
Can I read it? No.
What I'll request...
The conclusion is here, they can see it. They can see it.
Is that we also, media council staff and the rest will also not work if we constantly must be threatened every time we do something and be reminded how people worked hard to bring the media council. So it's a favor people to be there, so they must do what people agree. You know, we must also move away these threats against media council and their staff. I mean, they are also becoming too much even in the streets, everywhere. They let people also work. And so to me, and two, that was a policy statement by the media council, which I cannot add or remove.
Let us agree on this. And Victor, even if you say that that was a policy statement by a document by the Media Council, that policy statement must be in line with your regulations and in the line with the act that you exist. No, leave alone writing to you, because this is a debate because that is how you can also help the debate and you can help the industry. Because listen, let me just finish my argument. Because the truth is that the act allows you, and actually part of the code of conduct is about headlines and the corresponding story. So therefore, if you found that there is a specific media house and a specific news, you can use that part to enforce it, because you cannot enforce an act using a press statement, because you are not a lobby, you are a regulator.
Okay.
And therefore,
every just told us Kinot is doing so well by giving information. Now, right now,
you are not giving information here, because that's not giving information.
We have less than 4 minutes to conclude. Christine says she has evidence to the fact that people are actually getting tired. And with the headlines, as you conclude.
So data analysts and researchers Odipo Dev commissioned a study of 170,000 news pieces last year. This is online sharing of news. This is videos, stories, sound bites, all that. And they found, and they ranked the top stories by the number of shares, likes, engagements, basically any kind of interaction. The higher the interaction, the more people talked about it, connected with it, the more they shared it. And they found that in the top 50 of the most interacted with articles from 2019, not one of them was a political story, was a corruption scandal, had anything to do with Jubilee or BBI or anything like that. All those stories, with the exception of very few, were just what we call human interest stories. So it was the boy with the excavator in Kisii. It was the twins, the long-lost twins who connected and found each other. It was Kenya's, the Kenyan teacher who won the best teacher in the world prize. It was the stories about Eliud Kipchoge. And basically, when you look at that wealth of data, these are 170,000 pieces of news, right? From video clips to text stories and everything. And not one of these stories that are on our headlines show up in that list of the stories that Kenyans are sharing, talking about, reading.
I must respond to that.
To this particular story.
Okay. First of all, I think this is the same story that had a table of the most shared or whatever, some websites and so on and so forth, and some influencer. And there was one who was noted in red. What was her name?
That's not what we are talking. We're talking about the news stories, not about the influencers.
There was you had Nation, Standard, KTN, Citizen, all those characters, and there is some influencer who beats all of them. What was her name?
Go ahead.
Natalie Tewa. So I wondered, I've never heard of her. Who is she? So I went to her page. It is just the pictures of her half naked or 3/4 naked.
However, that's not news.
No, that is
not
it.
news.
That is it. If you're going to say that is a gauge of what people want to see.
No, the news stories.
This is the one.
We will all go to Pornhub because it beats everybody.
The news stories did not mix influencers and
yes. This is a table, just to be...
If that is a guide of what people want, we will all go to Pornhub. And the nation will start airing porn.
My point
Secondly, if I as editor of Nation or Standard or KTN or anything else decides these are my news priorities, it is not a breach of the code of ethics to display what I want to display.
Yeah, you raise a point. It's only fair that Christine responds.
And what in my view
yes.
is what sells.
Okay.
I need to respond.
Yeah, and as you look at what Macharia brought up in this particular issue, yes. Go ahead.
So news editors have absolutely the freedom to put what they want on the headlines. My point is, out of those 50 top stories, I'm not mixing news stories with influencer engagement. These are news stories, all 50 of them. And none of them had anything to do with what is on the headlines.
Politics and what
That's my point.
But there's still no breach of the code of ethics.
No, I've not said that there's a breach of the code of ethics. I'm just pointing out.
Yes.
I am substantiating my earlier claim about audiences tuning up.
Being detached.
You are right, and we also respect the researchers who did the job, because it also depends on the methodology and the population, actually. But look at it this way, and we've done this, actually, is a project that we are running with the MCK and Editors Guild. We are actually going to the people. We are doing town hall meetings with the 190 and the consumers of news. And we have all the recordings and all the reports which we can share with you what they are saying. Actually, what they are telling us is completely different from that. And we can give you the recordings so that you don't say...
What's the overall thing?
What are they saying?
I mean, political stories still sell.
Yes.
Go to Garden Square, go to Ambassador, go everywhere. You'll get people in groups.
Exactly. And they were telling, and they were telling all this.
But is that representative of the entire nation?
This is a question we asked the audience in Eldoret. And somebody said that, let's say this, there are 2 local radio stations in Eldoret. And the question that was posed to the audience was that one station will be hosting Mandago, talking about BBI and how they like or they don't like BBI. Then there is another station that will be talking about health in Rift Valley. Which radio station will have the highest number of listeners? And the audience told us the one that will be hosting Mandago. You know, these are some of the things that actually we've done them with the audience.
But let Makali speak.
I think this research is important, but it must be understood in a certain context. Online readers are not necessarily newspaper buyers. And people circulate stories online, and people who circulate stories out of fun and all manner of reasons are not necessarily going to buy the newspaper, nor is that story going to sell a newspaper if you put it on the front page. There are certain nuances in newspapering and media sales that must be considered. These statistics might be real, they might be true, they reflect but in which territory? In cyberspace.
Which is where people are saying we're going. Which is where we're going.
But Mark, one of the things, and studies are there, there was a newspaper called The Leader that had been started at Royal Media Service.
As we wrap up, yes.
And it did not, I mean, the intention was not to cover any politics. I mean, development news, and the history is there. Exactly. There are radios that have been started and TV stations, niche TV on nutrition, on education, on particular, they have closed down. So when you are saying politics, I mean, development news sells, it sells where? We need also to interrogate, because I'm very sure.
Even the Star started as a social
pure
human interest.
But it went to a political publication.
But it has its audience.
But it went to political. That's what I'm saying, that attempts have been made where deliberately to move away from politics in terms of the radio, TV, and papers, and it has never worked. So, and these media houses are also investing in research. They cannot be selling. If every day the statistics show that they are returning all the returns, they will not be in business. So to assume that because we sell politics because it's media houses that are forcing politics into people is also not correct. So let's give the room. Look at the weekend, most of the weekend publications, which are largely political analysis, family. They have the highest number of sales.
Yes.
So that also circulation. I mean, so that also tells you something. So let's.
But we are crying a lot about
general.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, falling circulation is global. It's not
going online. It's true. Very true.
It's not limited to Kenya because they are selling politics.
Of access to information. How
Right.
many sources are people having?
You know what I would say is this. I think every serious newsroom, there's a lot of guys there who are just doing research.
Yeah.
What sells and what doesn't. How should we shape our news coverage, and so on and so forth. It's not just one character who sits down and decides they must put it on page one.
Okay.
Secondly, that media council report seems to give the impression that this news on the BBI, on Raila, Ruto, Uhuru, and all that is a creation of the media. It is not. The media has not called a single public rally anywhere. The media has not called a single public rally anywhere.
When they give the Kina live coverage, the senator, the live coverage, and he talked about what he talked. The media gave him the live. They flouted the rule on delayed responses and what. You gave out a very serious article on the same.
Yes.
So the media have a responsibility.
I've always said this. I am not going to cover up for a fellow who is speaking nonsense. Let him expose himself. Simple.
But don't relay the same.
We have said we have looked at these things of hate speech since 2007.
Yes, and we need to be careful.
And we have found out that it is you don't cover up, but you tell the story responsibly.
Okay, we wind up now. We're out of time. But Christine, as you speak about Baraza Media Lab, I have to give this plug because it's something new and it's something to challenge the way we think as media. That is traditional media, and this must be a lot of flesh for you to sink your teeth in. What's happening right now?
Absolutely, this has been a very vigorous and engaging discussion, and I thank my colleagues for it. Baraza Media Lab is a new space for us as journalists. This is both people who are in newsrooms, traditional media houses, and freelancers, people who are working with video, film, podcasts, text, online, to meet to discuss issues that are pertinent in the industry, like this one, this kind of forum, and also to creatively collaborate together. Ultimately, I think my immediate goal is to see us find joy again in the work that we do. I know so many journalists who are very, very discouraged because over time they've done hard-hitting stories that kind of seem to go nowhere. And people fall away from this work because it's actually very emotionally draining.
Yes.
And we want to get us together. Okay. Like I said at the beginning, we have really, really good, talented people. And we want to provide those opportunities to work together and to create, collaboratively.
How do they find you online?
barazalab.com. Follow us on all social media channels. Okay. And in closing, let me just say this. I think our conversation here, especially the last third of this conversation, has really been touching on something that is existential to me, which is a lot of times we present things that are happening in the political arena as fait accompli, basically as it's a done deal. Like our job is just to report on what is already happening. Yes. Like Huduma number, it's done. BBI, it's done. JKIA Expressway, and even the government does this a lot. They launch projects, and then after that, that's when they put out public participation.
Yes.
But I think that really disempowers us as citizens to live in a country where things are already done. Like everything is already completed and sorted out, and it's just your job to cheerlead. It's a very disempowering position to find yourself in.
All right.
And I think we as the media have a responsibility to not play into those narratives, but instead to lift people out of that feeling of being disempowered, and so that the information that they have actually gives them the power to do something about the situation that we find ourselves observing all the time.
Okay, and with trying to survive the times, the East African is trying to have a new look. What can we expect, Eric, as a sub-editor?
Definitely tomorrow, I think we'll be hitting the streets with a new look, the East African, and is one of the, actually, if you look at the paper, because we worked on it over the past 2 weeks, actually is going to be the best paper actually in this region, as it has always been. We are going to.
Why do you have it?
Yeah.
Journalists has become a market.
No, because it's something that actually we've put some thinking into it. We've put some professional touch to it, and we've worked to make sure that we're able to serve the public, because the public actually are our employers, so that when you get a paper, once you finish reading that paper, you feel that at least you have value for your money and the time you spent reading that paper.
Okay, and Makali, Macharia, and Macharia and Victor have not paid me, but a few seconds.
No, I have nothing. I don't have anything to
launch
sell or to launch. But I think it's been a very invigorating discussion.
Yes.
These issues will not go away. They will be with us. And the thing is that we have to keep engaging, understanding each other, and also understanding our limits, and not trying to impose ourselves on everybody else.
Makali?
Well, I just want to say that I'm not jealous of the people who are sitting in the editorial seats at this point in time. And I just want to urge them to keep hacking at it. I mean, this job is not easy, and it's getting more difficult by the day because of the political environment getting very polarizing and so forth. They must hold ground and try and remain professional beyond reproach, beyond the emerging political factions, and render service and a commitment to journalism as a custodian of public and common good. I think that is what we must keep in our mind all the time. And let's call evil evil and right and wrong wrong without being fuzzy about it.
Yes.
So let's condemn wrong and let's do the right thing.
I don't know if Christina views the word right. This is fait accompli for this episode, but the issues continue. You've impressed me with that big word there. I'll still Google it. But yes, you can find her work on Baraza Media Lab, and as well, look out for the East African Aujalipa. So, Aujalipa. Aujatuma Salamu Victor Bwire. I will not say anything betrays him, but that's where we end Press Pass. Thank you to the team that has made this possible. Thank you to Eric, David, Christine, Macharia, and Victor Bwire. Victor Bwire, you see, it wasn't that bad. Have a good night. Thank you for watching.
This is NTV.
I help women find independence by training them in fish farming. It's tough on my back, joints, and can cause headaches. Panadol Extra relieves multiple types of pain. If symptoms persist, seek medical advice.
Jabali ana mchumba mwingine?
Mambo ya wasichana huwa hana. Ni ngumu sana kujua.
Shika hii.
Na kuomba usiambie mtu.
Sawa.
Ndio.
Jabali yuko wapi? Utampigia ama haumpigii?
Huyu hapa kwenye magoti yangu.
Niache mimi nimsambazie maumivu yule mpaka akitoka hapo ende akafilie mbali huko mbele.
With Lipa na M-Pesa, you get more.
Lipa na M-Pesa.
Every 100 shillings spent on Lipa na M-Pesa earns you an entry into the draw. Do more with Lipa na M-Pesa.
I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up.
Trend.
It's going down, cause I'm around.
Trend.
Everybody knows I'm a motherfucking star. Let me make one thing clear.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Trend.
Nothing can stop me, I'm all the way.
The Trend, in association with Maybelline New York.
Fit Me Foundation from Maybelline, New York.